What's going on, guys? It's Fear Turbo here, and today we're going to talk about the ThunderKnight build for the Stamina Sorcerer. I've been playing and messing with this build for a while now to try to get it updated for Homestead. Because we had the nerfs to Stam Sork, the nerfs to crit hit damage, and so I had to really tweak this one to find what works best for me. And this is what I found. Just jump right into the gear. We're going with obviously Two-Fang Snake. Now, I did a video on this set and saying that it was bugged, but it actually is a game problem with certain skills taking your stats and not updating your stats throughout the dots, like dual wields, deadly cloak, or caltrops, etc. So maybe that'll be in a later video. But as for now, Two-Fang Snake is the best set for stamina users. It allows us to have a lot of penetration. Now we had to tweak a couple things because of we're using pen and not crit hit damage anymore. Well, we still are using crit hit damage, but we're not speccing solely into crits anymore. So Two-Fang Snake, all body pieces, all divines. Obviously, it only comes in medium. Now for the monster set, we're doing Krog because Krog gives us 1,935 pen, and this is very important because this is a major stat. Since we're stacking pen, we want to have a good bit of pen. I don't have a divines yet, but I will. So basically, we're just stacking pen. Now the thing about Krogs is you're going to have to be on your target a lot because it has these short bursts. But if you're, pretty much on your target a lot, it does the most amount of DPS in a single target fight. Because when the monster sets were changed to non-critting, that really narrowed down the selection. I mean, we had Veladreth, we had Stormfist, we had Krog, and you guys know I love Stormfist, and it did a lot of damage for me, even in single target and in AoE. Even though it had a stamina regen on it, it still did a lot of damage. I don't even have it on this character anymore. It's pretty sad, actually. But now we're going with Krog. We're going to have a lot of penetration, which is key. We're going to use 3 Vicious Ophidian jewelry, all weapon damage and chance. You could just use Alkosh. They're the same 2 and 3 piece. And you actually might prefer Alkosh, just depending. To sustain better, say your team is all Magicka, which most likely is these days, and you don't have any Magplars in the group, or you're just not getting any shards, then you'll want to go with 5 Vicious Ophidian, which I don't have the other piece. But basically, you'll want to go with the 5-piece Vicious Ophidian to reduce your stamina costs abilities, or you don't use Caltrops. It's one or the other, because Caltrops is a main contributor to loss of stamina. It does a lot of damage and it does a lot of implosion procs, but if you have to give it up because you have no stamina, you're gonna have to go either way. Moving on to the weapons, we're going with double daggers. Now the reason for this is because the Maelstrom Axe procs a bleed. The bleed is true damage and is not affected by penetration. So if we take a look at our gear, we're spec'd all into pen. So the bleed is not going to do a whole lot of damage, like not at all. And so what used to happen is we used to use the axe and we used to use Twice-Born Star. And Twice-Born Star would help us crit a lot and crit hard, which the Maelstrom Axe was true damage, so it didn't matter about how much penetration you had. So it would crit up to 19k. Now we're seeing similar numbers sometimes, but it's very low. It's very low, and it's not enough to warrant it on my bar or on my gear, so I'm going with the double daggers. Now, because we're wearing Krog, we're going with 1 dagger sharpened, 1 dagger precise. This will give us a very balanced stat pool for critting. We want to crit still, even though crits got nerfed, we still want to crit. We want to crit more often now, because our crits don't hit as hard. We used to run around maybe a low 60 to 75% crit, but they would hit hard when they hit, so it averaged out to be very good. Now they don't hit as hard, just a tad less, but we want to crit more often with our pin being so high. So we want to have a good crit rating. That's why I went the double daggers, 1 precise, 1 sharpens. That's going to give us a lot of crit. And obviously the Maelstrom bow, go sharpened on the back bar because you don't want to lose all your penetration, especially when buffs times are going up and down. Yes, if you have, all the debuffs on the boss, this is obviously overpin, but at the same time, this is going to cover the area of when you're on your back bar, when the buffs may be down, so you don't lose damage. So let's go into the skills. The skills are still the same as the last update. Hurricane, obviously, for the buff on our front bar, and for the extra 2% while slotted, we get extra 2% weapon damage. Now, Hurricane did get a nerf on the last tick, a lot. It did get a nerf, but it is still good because, one, this is one of the best AoE skills for stamina. Two, it gives us our defense skills as well, which is why the reason why I'm playing Stamina Sorcerer is because they have they're very easy to survive and these high overlapping mechanics of all the new trials. So we get an AoE, which is good. This skill is good versus single target as well. We get our major defense, which is very good. It has a long duration, so we're going to look at that during the rotation part. Raining Slashes, again, is a bleed, which isn't affected by pin. So this one is a little iffy. It still does very good damage, but it could be more, more beneficial to your overall damage if we were using different, gear or whatnot. But that's just one of our skills, and it does get boosted, and we'll talk about that in a second. Deadly Cloak pretty much is a must-have for all stamina builds because, one, it's very good damage over time, single target and AoE, and it gives you 20% reduction to AoE damage from your enemies. So it's a must-have. These two make the Stam Sorcerer extremely tanky. This is our spammable Rapid Strikes, very good. We have Bound Armaments on our bar for the 8% max stamina. We also get 2% weapon damage for it, although we don't have a lot of weapon damage because, again, our gear doesn't give us a whole bunch. But since Pin is pretty much king right now, that's what we're going with. And Rend is like the best ultimate to have if you have the Maelstrom weapons. It's a ton of damage, and I'll show you the tooltips in a second. On our back bar, we have Injection, obviously. It's a 50% execute. We have Endless Hell, which is paired with the Maelstrom bow, extremely strong. Rearming Trap for our minor force, and it did hit a big nerf. This is actually does less than Raining Slashes and Deadly Cloak now. Maybe it does about the same as those two before you hit 25%. I'll go in that in a second. Razor Caltrops is like king for Stam Sorts because, one, we get 5% extra damage to physical attacks. Two, it procs Implosion, and I mean it procs it a lot compared to not having, because they tick every second. So this is extremely awesome, especially in like hard mode Rakat when you have Caltrops out. The assassins, they get low. They can implode. You can implode AoE. Like it's pretty awesome to have this. And you'll notice that in some of my gameplay videos. Bound Armaments again, so we can have it on both bars. We have to have it on both bars. And then Dawnbreaker of Smiting. Now you're probably thinking, why not the Blow Ultimate? You can put the Blow Ultimate here for certain situations, like maybe the twins. Maybe you want to get fancy. You can bolt across so you don't lose as much damage. And when the bosses they switch sides, you can put the bolty here. And I've been playing around with that, but I like Dawnbreaker Smiting here because look at the cost. It's 107. And Rend is 128. So when the boss is nearing its end, you can really amp your damage at the end with the Dawnbreaker Smiting, and I'm going to go over that real quick. Let's go over there to the training dummy. Yes. Oh, by the way, this is my house. I still got a lot of work on it. All right, so basically, it's not as good as Rend, but if the boss is near death, and you have 100 ult, you know you're very close to Dawnbreaker smiting, and if it has about 10 seconds to live, you're not going to be able to get another Rend up and use 16 seconds of Rend. So basically, what I do is I have all my dots out on my back bar, and I'm going through my front rotation. After you have time between after you do rapid strikes, rending slashes. These are about to need to be applied, Deadly Cloak and Hurricane. So you can do a rapid strikes, swap to your back bar, and do a Dawnbreaker smiting, and swap back extremely quick. One, because the Dawnbreaker smiting will take your front bar damage, your dual wield damage, and two, because you want to empower the Dawnbreaker. The Dawnbreaker can be empowered versus one target, which is the one you use rapid strikes on, and I'll show you that right now. So basically, I'm going to rapid strikes, and then swap bars, Dawnbreaker, and swap back immediately. So let's say it says 17,631 over 5 seconds, right? Let's just take a look after I use the Maelstrom daggers. 24,000 over 5 seconds. That's a good burst towards the end of the fight to really up your DPS. So you have to make this decision of whether or not you can or can't get another Rend and make use of it. Let's see, something else I wanted to point out. Also, the reason why Rend and Deadly Cloak are our top contributors to damage along with rapid strikes is because of this ability right. Oh, this one. Oh, where is it? Oh, this one right here. I'm sorry. Slaughter. Now, increases our damage with dual wield abilities by 20% against enemies under 25% health. So we don't have an execute, but we have 2 passive executes. So basically, once we hit 25%, our rending slashes is doing more damage, our deadly cloak's doing more damage, rapid strike's doing more damage, and Rend is doing more damage. Look at that, 65k tooltip. We do a rapid strikes, it's almost 100k. Once we get under 25% health, this thing is hitting so hard. So hard. You put a Warhorn on top of this, whew, man, you're hitting hard as hell. Alright. I love Rend. Also, this is part of our survivability. Because other classes, maybe like a Dragonite, uses the standard, even though it got nerfed, it still uses standard. And I've been playing around with that on the Dragonite as well. But basically, because we're using Rend as our main ult, and we're empowering it, we're getting extra healing off of this. If you don't have Caltrops, another side note, sorry. If you don't have Caltrops, another thing good here for your team is to slot crit surge and just do it every other time, just like Caltrops. Every other time you swap bars. This is going to make you extremely tanky with the Deadly Cloak, the Hurricane, and if you're not dying in the raids and you're doing decent DPS, people are going to keep inviting you back to raids. And then once you get better at the mechanics, you start knowing it more, you're more comfortable, you understand that you may have shards, or you can use 5 Vicious Fitting. You can put Caltrops back on there and really up your game, because Caltrops is a game changer for Stamp Sword. It kills it with the Implosion passive and the extra 5% raw damage to this. I mean, this is a massive dot. But again, look, it costs 5,000 stamina. So basically, the overview is Stamp Sword is the tankiest. Stamp Sword is the easiest to survive on, for the fact that we use Rend as our ultimate, we have Deadly Cloak and Hurricane, which is our AoE damage, and it does give single target, and it gives us our major buffs. That's very important, because we're using this and we're not losing downtime on damage. We're applying damage and getting our defense. It's incredible. So for those that just want to take a look at my stats real quick, I'll take a pot. 17k health, 37k stamina. We have 7 points into stamina, so we can, because we're using 7 medium, we need to get back to the health that everyone else has, which is 17k. We have 78.2% crit, which should be 79 if I had a golden Divine's Piece. And if a Nightblade's in the group, I think they give you either 2 or 3% from their crit passive. I believe it's 2%. look at our this is our basically the same as everyone else's stats right here. 14k spell, 12k physical. Because we're a sword, we get up to 19k and 17k. Very important. Our penetration is almost close to having 2 sharpened weapons, but we're using the Krog and 1 precise, so we're not far off. We don't lose any damage at all, and we gain the crit from having precise on there, which is very nice. Let's go into CP. Now, again, you have to understand, this CP is for me. This CP is personally for me because I understand that my team's uptime on Alkosh is going to be around 80%, and all the other buffs are going to cover the downtime of that, like the Crusher enchant from the tank, the Power of the Light from the healer, and so on. So basically, I don't need any points in penetration. You see that we have a lot of penetration in our build, and if your team doesn't have that, I would suggest either using 2 sharpened weapons and Krog, or if you don't have sharpened weapons at all, maybe you don't have Maelstrom sharpened weapons, and putting some points into penetration is effective. I use 97 points into Mighty so that I can get more points into Thaumaturge, because again, everything we do is a dot. Everything we do is a dot. So I want to balance it out. So I have 97 in Mighty, 68 in Thaumaturge, 35 in Precise Strikes. This red CP is based on what trial you're doing, or what enemies are gonna do damage to you. So basically, this is my Maul of Lorcage CP. I have 100 in Elemental Defender because it's mainly magic damage. Hardy, I have 15%. I could go lower in this, but I just don't want to risk it. The only person that's going to get you is the Sword and Board guys that do the Shadow Slash, the AoE. Those guys will kill you. I usually put on 5 Vicious... I'll get into that in a second. Actually, I don't do that. I put 15 points in the Hardy, or 15%, and the rest in the Spell Shield to really boost my survivability in Maul of Lorcage. Don't do any in here. 100 in a Warlord. Although next patch, this will be taken out. So we'll have to take another look at 5 Vicious Obsidian and what we're going to do. We're doing 53 points into Mooncalf and 46 in Tenacity. Now, we'll go over our rotation in a second, but once you get the back bar on the boss, and then you're going through your rotation, you're doing rapid strikes, rending slashes, and then these are going to have a little bit of downtime, or they're going to still have uptime. I'm sorry, that's a bad choice of words. And you can do a couple rapid strikes. What I usually do is I do a heavy attack into a rapid strikes. We get 11% extra damage on our heavy attacks here, and because we might not be getting shards a whole lot, I have 10% extra point. 10% extra in here. So because this isn't gonna boost my low recovery anyway, I have such low recovery, it's not gonna help it. I have 1 into tumbling because sometimes you have to break free in Maul of Lorcage or roll dodge, etc. Another thing to note would be for trash. Okay, so this is my single target setup, right? I have the Krog, everything. On my AoE setup, I do 5 Alkosh, which I don't have the rings on for some reason. I do 5 Alkosh. Basically, I just take off the Krog and I help the team out for AoE situations. So I do 5 Alkosh, which is 1 helmet, 1 shoulder, which I don't have divines. And I've probably thrown them away because I didn't ever know I was going to need them. And then the jewelry Alkosh. So what this is, basically, it's the same 3-piece as Vicious Obsidian. It adds weapon damage, and then it gives you an AoE shockwave, which you have to have a synergy to activate, and there's plenty of synergies in Trash. So you're going to activate it. It's going to help your team keep the uptime of this buff on the mobs, because you're going to be in there in the nitty-gritty, getting in there and then blocking and doing NATO, because blocking reduces the damage, and we have to block. I mean, we just have to block. And this is synergies are gonna help your sustain. So basically, this is keeping the debuff on the mobs, and it's putting a dot, an AoE dot, which is upping our AoE damage in trash, which is mainly what most trials are, and it's actually pretty lame, although I hear good things about the new trial, so we'll see. This is going to be more effective than running 3 Vicious Ophidian and Krog. It's also going to be more effective than wearing 5 Vicious Ophidian in terms of damage. This is going to up your damage. You're going to be able to do like 100k AoE damage, although it's not comparable to Magicka because they can do much more, but you're close. So this is going to help your team. This is going to help your damage. It's really good to run 5 Alkosh. I know most of you don't have it, so what you could do is just go with 5 Vicious Ophidian, helmet, helmet, shoulder, and jewelry. That way your skills cost less and everything. But I would suggest using Paltrops for AoE. This is almost a must. It does so much damage in AoE. If you're having trouble surviving, make sure you rend multiple targets. Other than that, I use the Bow Ultimate for shooting down the Sun Eaters, the mages, and Maul of Lorcage, or like important targets like maybe Overchargers and Sanctum Ophidia, etc. This does a lot of damage in a short amount of time. Obviously, Rend would be much better to keep you alive, but for doing burst, this can crit up to 100k DPS if you get some crits and some warhorns. It can really burst down a target, which helps it get down to the 25% mark, which helps your damage and everyone else's damage. Just getting it down to the threshold where it can be executed before it does a mechanic is very important. So that's the gear, guys. We're going to move on to the rotation part, and I'll see you in a bit. So basically, we're going to go over my thought process about how to set up a rotation, what works best for you, and how I do mine. So basically, we need to look at all of our skills and the damage that they do in a parse. So you just do a normal parse. You'll see that injection is usually at the top, rapid strikes is usually at the top, rend is usually at the top. You'll fill out the most important skills in your set, and then you'll put basically a priority set in your mind that these skills are important and that they need to be up when they're ready. And then you also have to keep in mind buffs. This is giving me my minor force. This is giving me my major defense buffs. So and this is giving me defense to AoE ability. So you have to keep all of this in mind. Now, how to start a rotation? Basically, all of these on my back bar are pretty long duration, and they can be placed on the ground before the boss gets there. These can be applied before a fight as well. So what I do is I do Deadly Cloak first, Hurricane, and you'll notice my Surrender buff is telling me that Deadly Cloak is going to be up in 8 seconds, right? It's at the top. So that allows me, I use this information so I can keep my rotation fresh. I like a fixed rotation in the sense of practice, but when it comes to boss fights, I always do a non-fixed rotation. I always continuously update my rotation based on what's going on in the fight. So if I have to cleanse a curse, obviously my rotation is interrupted, and I know with the information that Surrender gives me what needs to be applied, what is down, and what needs, what's about to go down. Also taking into effect that I personally know that Hurricane's my defense buff, I need my minor force, this is a really good skill for damage, so I use that information consistently, change my rotation based on the needs of the fight. For a DPS test dummy, obviously he's just standing there, so I don't have to move, my rotation won't be messed up. So this is the idea of my fixed rotation. We're going to do Trap first, because as you can see, when you use Trap, it takes a little bit to arm, then it's armed, right? The same goes for Endless Hail. If you let the animation go, it takes a while for it to actually hit the target. But even if you block cancel it, it's still going to take a while before it actually hits the ground. So with that being said, that's how I start my rotation. I put a trap on the ground, and I do an Endless Hail. trap in the ground, endless hell. And then I do caltrops, an injection, and then swap. You can do injection, then caltrop, swap, doesn't matter. Then I do a rapid strikes, and then a rending slashes. Now notice I always do these buffs first, then I run in there and do trap, then hail, caltrops, then injection, swap. Then I only have to do rapid strikes, rending slashes, because we want to empower the dot with my buff. And if you have your ultimate up, when you first swap, and the first thing you'll do is rapid strikes, rapid strikes, rending slashes, because again, we know that this does the most damage. It's one of our top damage contributors. So if you have your ultimate up at the beginning of the fight, first thing you'll do is rapid strikes, then rend after your back bar rotation. We want to get all of our back bar dots out, then do this. So this is how it'll look. Put Deadly Cloak on, Hurricane, run up there. And then this, and then you do a couple rapid strikes, Deadly Cloak, and rapid strikes, Hurricane, swap, trap, just like that. So you saw that you never saw that. Basically, you never saw the Hurricane animation. You didn't see it, right? What happens is I can swap cancel this before I go back to my back bar. So I know that rapid strikes is going to empower my rearming trap. And here's a little tip: if you do rapid strikes, rearming trap, then inlet while it's arming, you do an endless hail, then an injection. Basically, rapid strikes is going to empower rearming trap dot, and it's not, the buff is not going to get consumed while you're doing endless hail. Then the damage ticks on rearming trap. Then you use injection, and then injection consumes the buff. So basically, both of these dots are getting empowered by the Maelstrom daggers. After you do that, you're going to come back and do rapid strikes, then rending slashes again, because this is the 9-second dot, and it'll be up or ready to be reapplied. It's okay if you reapply rending slashes beforehand, before it's done. There's no cons in that, other than you could be doing something else, but we'll get to that. So I'm just gonna get ult again. So that's my rotation always. That's my thought process of the best rotation that I like. Now, obviously, like we talked about, I do a non-fixed rotation. So if you watch the left side of my bar, you'll see that Surrender is going to say that Hurricane needs to be reapplied before I go to my back bar. That's why I do this Hurricane, then swap to my back bar. You have to do it quick because the Maelstrom daggers only give you 4 seconds to apply both of the buffs. Again, that's another reason why I don't do light attacks on my back bar, because I want to get all of these out and back to my front bar. Light attacks will give you Hawkeye, which increases your damage bow abilities by 5% for 5 seconds, stacking up 5 times. Yes, this is very nice. Usually I might slip in one light attack, but for 5 seconds I could, these dots could go down. If I just do light attack this, light attack this, light attack this, then my rotation's a little screwy, etc. So basically we're gonna buff up, and you'll notice, say that this is the boss and he hasn't appeared yet, like Rakat is coming down, he's getting ready to appear. I'm gonna use all my buffs, then I'm gonna take a pot. That way my stamina is full. You see my stamina went down to 90, and then I took a pot and it's back up to 100. So I'm gonna buff up, shoot my arrows, I'm gonna do rapid strikes, reapply deadly cloak, then rapid strikes, hurricane, and this is where you can get a heavy attack now. Rapid strikes again. Hurricane flip. And rending. See my stam. etc. Etc. Just like this. Over and over and over. Then say the boss is getting close to low, right? Keep doing the rotation. That needs some more stam. So basically, let's say the boss is getting low. And I'm just gonna show you something real quick. Let's say the boss is getting low. And we've done all our rotation, right? It's all out on the boss. We've done rapid strikes, raining slashes, and we have this downtime where we usually do a heavy attack. Say the boss is about to die and we only have 107 ult, like we talked about earlier. What I would do is I'd have all my buffs out, right, on the boss. I'd do rapid strikes, come back here, then swap back. Again, that's going to empower your Smiting Dawnbreaker. So what you do is you do a rapid strikes, swap to the back bar, Dawnbreaker, and immediately swap. That way it takes your dual wield damage. If you notice on my back bar, Smiting Dawnbreaker does that damage. My front bar, it does even more damage. And then when you empower it, it does even more damage. So, guys, that was my thought process, kind of like my rotation. We're going to buff up. We're going to put our back bar dots out because they take time to arm. And go to our front bar, rapid, then rending slashes. Then you can do a heavy attack in this time period. Then you're going to do deadly float. Then you're going to do rapid strikes, hurricane swap, trap, hail, injection. That's how it's done. What's up, guys? And before I forget, I had to add this in. Before I forget, I don't think I ever said this. We're using the Thief Mundus, which is pretty much the strategy for any DPS class right now, because it's giving the most amount of damage. And we are using this buy stamina food, which gives us the max amount of health, the max amount of resources, and we are using weapon damage crit pots because they give us our major brutality, which is our weapon damage, and it gives us our major savagery, which is our crit buff, along with the immediate stamina. Another thing to note is very important is to have your alchemy passives up, because this allows you to have your pot up 100% of the time, which is keeping your two major buffs up and stamina back all the time. It's keeping those buffs up 100% of the time. So guys, if you like this, leave a comment about what you liked about it. Maybe there's another class you want to see. If you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe already. There's more to come. I'll see you on the next time.